Alright, as we said, the invasion of these islands of Japan, not that, sorry. Oh, jeez. Why'd you do that to me? Hang on one second. As we said, the invasions of Japan become very costly. And so we're going to turn our attention to a lesser known. Now, I say lesser known because it was very hush-hush and it was very secretive. So let me introduce you to a couple people you probably, well, when you recognize, definitely. This is Leo Scheisel. You don't recognize him, but you should recognize this man. It's Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein immigrated to the United States right about at the start of the Nazis really pushing the Jews, and they began to use him in a project. Now, these people, along with other ones, will establish what is called the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was a scientist organization, and the whole idea was to split an atom, to create, to see the kind of destructive force that the atom had. And so that's all they were basically doing in the Manhattan Project, and later on they'll build a bomb. But they're going to split the atom, and they're going to do all these tests eventually, okay? Now, the man put in charge is not Albert Einstein, it's not Scheisel, it is actually J. Robert Oppenheimer. J. Robert Oppenheimer, and kind of a weird twist here, is actually a communist supporter. He marries a lady who is a former communist member. And he's the one who decides on all these sites I'm about to tell you, and he kind of, everything has something different going on, and it was really intense. A lot of people think it was just testing out in the desert, but as I'm about to show you, the Manhattan Project was vastly different. The whole idea of the Manhattan Project eventually will be to, as I said, split the atom and create a bomb, and Oppenheimer is the man in charge there. Okay, now as you can see here, there's actually a whole bunch of sites, correct? None of them happen to be in Manhattan, and everything had something different going on. And in fact, we had, mining the uranium here. The three biggest areas are here and here and here. In Oak Ridge in Tennessee, they actually mined the uranium from the mountains. They then shipped it to Richland up here in Washington, and that's where they kind of put it into a bomb. And Los Alamos is a project. It's the laboratory that he decided ultimately on, okay? Now, Albert Einstein is probably going to be your most famous person associated with the Manhattan Project that people love to talk about, okay? Now, J. Robert Oppenheimer is the one who will basically move the lab into Los Alamos, and then he decides on Alamogordo as the idea to have Project Trinity, which I will talk about in a second. Okay? Now, once we move into the actual testing, etc., it now moves from a scientific project to a national security project, and the military man put in charge was General Leslie Groves, okay, and he's the one giving the shots, calling the shots, I guess you would on. Now, in Los Alamos is the lab. It's actually also the testing facility, a little bit close to that. So Los Alamos, New Mexico is the lab and testing facility for the atomic bomb. Now here is the front gate, and this actually freaked people out so badly that I'm going to show you here. Wes Craven was actually a young boy, and he decided that, well, what happened if people got exposed to this radiation that was supposedly safe? And it became one of his most popular titles, The Hills Have Eyes. And so that's basically saying there are people there and they somehow got hurt, etc. Now, at Los Alamos is also going to be the place where they launch Project Trinity, and it's also called Codename Able. What that's saying is Project Trinity is where we're going to artificially explode the bomb into the atmosphere, and they had many tests, and the first one was called Able, after, first man on Earth, etc. And so that's where we're going with that, correct? All right. Now, once the bomb is actually built and Harry Truman makes that fateful decision to drop the bomb, this man is put in charge. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about deciding to drop the bomb before moving forward. The big debate about this was, people said if you drop the bomb, you're going to kill innocent people. And other people said if you don't drop the bomb, our soldiers are going to die in mass numbers. And so it's a great responsibility, but as I said, remember Truman said the buck stops here. There's something more in your packet. We'll look at that. Now, this man here is Colonel Paul Tibbets, and he is in the U.S. Air Force, and his plane was called the Enola Gay. It's right here with his crew. So Paul Tibbets goes to Okinawa to pick up these things, this cargo. Now, he is aware of this. His crew, however, is not told what is on board. Now, why did they pick him in particular? Because when they drop the atomic bomb, a great feat has to be done. He has actually got to drop the bomb and then make like a 180 turn in less than a couple seconds to avoid being blown up from the aftershock. And by all tests, he's probably one of the only ones who can do it. Now, the first location we dropped the bomb on is Hiroshima. Hiroshima, this is what it looks like afterwards. It was just utterly destroyed. They gave little cutesy nicknames. Little boy was the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, so like a little boy did some damage. And coming from a father who has a little boys sometimes can do damage, but not to this extent. Okay, we then sit back and wait. The Japanese do nothing, so the decision comes again to drop a second atomic bomb on the city of Nagasaki. This one was actually called Fat Man. After this time, however, a couple days later, about a week later, the Japanese will surrender unconditionally, and World War II comes to an end. So there you have atomic bomb loosed on Nagasaki, right? There's Nagasaki, not the other one. Sorry, that's Nagasaki as well. Now here are the Americans and the Japanese on board a aircraft carrier where they're signing the unconditional surrender, and they're basically going to do this. Now, after this, VJ Day is proclaimed, and that is called Victory in Japan, and this iconic photograph came about. Now, this actually has a really cool story. The sailor decided, when I get off the boat, I'm going to kiss the first girl I see, and this young nurse was the first one he found. They later went on. They didn't date or anything like that. They had their own lives, and 50 years later, they brought them back to the actual scene where they had been and let them kind of talk about their experiences, their lives as they grown up, etc. And it's actually spawned kind of a tradition, if you will, and that's called First Kiss. And generally speaking, you find a sailor or somebody who's been gone for a long time that kind of did the most stuff, and they respected the most, and they're the ones to get off the boat first, because it takes a long time to get all those people off the boat and go and find their significant other, if you will. Okay. Now, the last little video we're going to look at here will be the last conferences going into the United Nations, etc. World War II has ended at this point, and we thought that would be the end of it. There would be no more wars. However, we were vastly wrong.